Sure, here's section 1 of the script, written with a strong emotional focus, clean pacing, and quality storytelling, staying within the minimum 760-word requirement, as requested. The rain came down harder than expected, soaking the edge of Lena's coat as she stood beside the stalled car, phone held high trying to find a signal. Jason leaned under the hood, tapping something with the back of a wrench, frustration written across his face. "This is hopeless," he muttered, brushing his damp hair back. Lena nodded. They both knew the car wasn't going anywhere tonight. She glanced at the empty stretch of road, trees leaning in on either side like they were closing in. "There's a motel 5 minutes back," she said. "I saw the sign when we passed." Jason hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Yeah. We'll figure out the car tomorrow." By the time they checked into the motel, it was already dark. The desk clerk looked apologetic when he said there was only one room left. 2 beds, non-smoking. Lena didn't protest, neither did Jason. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and damp wood. Jason flopped onto one bed, boots still on, rubbing the back of his neck. Lena slipped her coat off, draping it over a chair. "I can't believe your dad insisted we drive all the way down alone," she said, half laughing, half exhausted. Jason shrugged. "He's got his own way of prioritizing. Work first. Always has." She sat on the other bed and exhaled slowly. "Yeah. That's not new." There was a quiet between them, not awkward, just unspoken things. Lena kicked off her shoes, rubbed her feet through her socks. Jason looked over. "Doesn't it bother you?" "What?" "The way he treats you. Like, you're just expected to always be okay with everything." Lena's smile was sad. "It used to bother me more. Then I got tired of hoping it would change." Jason didn't say anything, but he looked at her a little differently, like he was seeing something he hadn't before. She stood, pulled a t-shirt from her bag, and disappeared into the bathroom. The sound of running water filled the silence. When she came out, she was dressed casually, makeup removed, hair pulled back. Just Lena, without the polish. She looked younger like that. More real. Jason looked up from his phone, eyes catching on her figure for half a second too long. He quickly glanced away. Lena noticed. She didn't say anything. Instead, she walked to the small counter, made a cup of instant tea. "Want one?" "Sure." Their fingers brushed as she handed it to him. Neither pulled away right away. Then they both did. The TV played quietly in the background, casting flickering light across the room. They sat in their separate beds, sipping tea, not really watching. "You know," Jason said after a long silence, "when I was younger, I used to think you were unreachable. Like, perfect. You kept everything together." Lena laughed softly. "That's a funny word for it. I mean it. You were the calm in all of his storms. Even when he wasn't around, you made things feel steady." She looked at him, something warm and uncomfortable rising in her chest. "You always noticed more than you let on, didn't you?" "Guess I did." She stared into her cup. "And now?" Jason turned toward her slightly. "Now I see how much you've carried alone." Lena didn't know what to say to that. The room felt warmer somehow, or maybe it was just her skin. "I'm gonna try to sleep," she said finally, voice quieter than before. Jason nodded. "Good night, Lena." She turned off the lamp between the beds. Darkness settled, but neither of them slept for a while. She could hear his breathing. Steady. Awake, and she was sure he could hear hers. Not a word passed between them. But in the dark, something had already shifted. They'd stepped closer to a line neither of them had meant to approach. The rain outside didn't let up. Inside, they lay still, separated by feet, bound by a silence heavier than anything they'd said out loud. The next morning, the motel room was filled with the soft hum of the heater and the muffled sound of tires on wet pavement outside. Lena stirred first, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling before turning her head slightly. Jason was already awake, lying on his back, eyes closed but his breathing too controlled. He wasn't asleep. She watched him for a moment longer than she should have, then forced herself to sit up, brushing hair from her face. He opened his eyes, turning his head toward her. "Morning," he said, his voice low. "Morning," she replied, tugging the blanket around her. Though she wasn't cold, neither of them spoke again until they were dressed and sitting in the motel's cramped breakfast nook. Coffee steamed between them in paper cups. A TV on the wall played morning news neither of them cared about. They said the tow truck won't be here until tomorrow, Jason said, scrolling his phone. Storm delays. Lena sighed. Of course. Another night. Same room. Same silence. Jason leaned back, watching her over the rim of his coffee cup. You look different this morning. She raised an eyebrow. Tired? No. Softer, maybe. I don't know. He glanced away quickly, embarrassed. Forget I said that. Lena didn't respond right away. She studied him quietly, then said, It's been a long time since someone looked at me like that. Like what? Like I'm more than someone's wife. Jason set his cup down. You're a lot more than that. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Intentional. Lena stood abruptly. I'm going to shower. Back in the room, the sound of water filled the walls again. Jason sat on the edge of his bed, staring at nothing. He'd told himself last night meant nothing. But her voice, her presence, none of it felt simple anymore. When she returned, wrapped in a motel robe, towel drying her hair, Jason's eyes flicked up, then down. She didn't seem to notice at first, then met his gaze and didn't look away. He stood. Lena, do you think I'm beautiful? She asked, cutting through his name like a whisper he didn't expect. Jason hesitated. His heart beat so loud he could hear it. Yes. More than you know. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak. She stepped closer. Slowly. Like testing ground that might collapse, Jason didn't move. He was barely breathing. I shouldn't ask, she said. But I wanted to hear it from you. He nodded. I shouldn't answer. But I meant it. Her hand lifted to his face, fingers tracing his jaw like she was remembering something that hadn't happened yet. His breath caught. I haven't been touched in months, she whispered. I would never hurt you, he said. Not ever. She kissed him. It wasn't rushed, or desperate. It was slow, fragile. It was two people forgetting who they were supposed to be and remembering how it felt to be wanted. The world fell away. And no one else existed. Not Greg. Not the rules. Not the names that defined them, only breath, skin. The way her hand gripped the edge of his shirt like she didn't want to let go. They moved like they'd rehearsed it in another life. No words. Just the quiet confirmation of something inevitable. Afterward, she lay beside him, her back turned, one arm covering her eyes. Jason stared at the ceiling, chest rising and falling with the weight of everything he couldn't say. I shouldn't have let that happen, she said finally. But you did, he replied. Silence. I don't regret it, Jason added. Lena pulled the blanket tighter around herself. That doesn't mean it was right. I know, he said. But it felt real. She turned to look at him, eyes glossy but unreadable. And what do we do with real, Jason? He didn't answer because he didn't know, because the truth was, in that moment, real felt better than right. The road was quiet on the drive back. Lena kept her eyes on the passing trees, hands resting still on her lap. Jason drove, one hand on the wheel, the other tapping rhythmically on his thigh. Neither of them had said more than a few words since leaving the motel. The tension wasn't hostile. Just full. Heavy. Like they'd both been handed a version of themselves they hadn't seen before, and neither knew how to fold it back into place. Jason cleared his throat. Are you okay? She looked over, then back out the window. I'm fine. He nodded, jaw tight. You don't have to pretend. I'm not pretending. I just don't know what to say that won't make it worse. Jason didn't answer. He didn't know what to say either. The silence between them felt different now. Not comfortable. Not cold. Just necessary. By the time they pulled into the driveway, it was almost dark. The house looked the same, but Lena felt like a stranger approaching it. Jason turned off the ignition but didn't move. Inside, Greg met them at the door with a distracted smile. He asked about the car, shook his head at the inconvenience, said he'd take care of it in the morning. Then he went back to his laptop at the kitchen counter like nothing had changed. Lena stood in the entryway, keys still in her hand, watching him. Watching how detached he could be without even realizing it. Jason walked past them both and disappeared upstairs. She didn't eat dinner. Said she was tired. Went straight to the bathroom and let the shower run longer than necessary. standing in the steam until her skin turned red. But it didn't scrub the feeling away. In the mirror, her reflection stared back, eyes hollow, mouth tense. She hated how easy it had been. Not the act itself, but how quickly something inside her had surrendered. The worst part wasn't the guilt. It was the clarity. She didn't feel like she'd cheated on a man who truly saw her. She felt like she'd stepped outside of a lie she'd been agreeing to for too long. That night, the hallway was quiet. She heard Jason's door open briefly, his footsteps pause outside her room. Then nothing. No knock. No conversation. Just hesitation. And then retreat. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep that wouldn't come. The next morning was ordinary. Greg left early. Jason made coffee but didn't linger. They exchanged polite words like co-workers passing in the break room. Everything between them had been sealed away behind expressions that didn't match the truth. Later, she found Jason in the backyard, throwing a tennis ball for the dog. "Hey," she said. He looked up. "Hey." She stood there, arms crossed, eyes scanning the fence line. "You know this doesn't go any further?" He nodded once. "I know." It was a moment. "That's all. I get it." She searched his face for resentment but found only restraint. And something else, regret, maybe, but not shame. Just quiet acceptance. "I care about you, Jason. Too much, probably. But this, it can't be anything. I never thought it would be." She believed him. That made it worse somehow. It meant they weren't foolish. They were just broken in the same place at the same time. Before turning to go back inside, she said, "Don't carry it around. Let it stay where it happened." He didn't answer. But he didn't disagree. That night, she stood alone in the kitchen, sipping cold wine from a mug. Greg came home late, barely said a word before going to bed. It was easier than she expected, pretending. Smiling. Acting like everything was fine. Jason passed her in the hallway once, their eyes meeting only briefly. There was no lingering. No word. Just a small nod that said more than anything else could. She closed her bedroom door behind her and locked it, not because she expected anything, but because she didn't trust herself to open it again. As she lay down, the voice in her head finally spoke the truth she'd been trying to avoid. Some betrayals aren't loud. They don't scream or leave scars. Some live in the spaces between the things you never say out loud, and no matter how still you lie at night, they shift just enough to remind you, you never really came back from it.